Welcome. Another spontaneous recording. Again, I was sitting having some toast, having some coffee, and sometimes I like to eat and just not have anything on in the background, no television, no music. Just my attention fully on the action of, in this case, eating, drinking. And there were some encouraging thoughts arising as I continued to sit and be. And some of those thoughts were how, in some ways, difficult this path is. And we can never have too much self-compassion, too much kindness, understanding. Forgiveness, if that's, I guess we may interpret that word in different ways and apply it in different actions, but whatever that means to you. Always to look at the last year, the last 2 years, and if there was such a graph that could measure presence or measure different episodes or days and weeks, whereas more present in other days and weeks, and perhaps there were days or more that I was completely unconscious. Perhaps it wouldn't be useful to look at, maybe the mind would be interested. But there was the general understanding that there are days when everything is clear, everything is calm, everything is simple. And if the mind was to interrupt that, it may comment, it may say, well, why can't it always be this way? What was your problem yesterday that isn't here today? Or the mind may say, I've made it, as I'm quoting Eckhart here, I'm sure one of his videos where he cautions to Mooji as well, quite often, if you have a moment of, even if it's a spiritual experience, you may have a moment of great depth of great inner peace. And the mind may come in to say, I've made it, this is it. But then, most likely, a day or two or more, weeks, maybe even months, there'll be a time when perhaps the unconsciousness covers up again what was so clear and what was so easy or simple, accessible, and suddenly you're lost again. And what may have worked before is no longer working now. Maybe there was a certain pointer or passage or a video that was watched that propelled you into a deeper depth of being. And that's the case for me. Let's stick with the 2 years or the 1 or 2 years. There's been moments where I've watched a video from a spiritual teacher, or I've read a passage from a book, and immediately the presence has risen, has increased the intensity. The joy. And perhaps more accurately, it's been uncovered. That pointer that was read, that video that was seen. And again, my mind, I'm sure, has come in and says, yes, I'm making progress now. This is good. And then, sometime later, it feels like I've taken 10 steps back, and the mind may say, just give up. It's too difficult. Or the mind may say it's okay, but really it's not. Really, perhaps you're going through the motions of that. Underneath that okay, perhaps there's disappointment or sadness or doubt. And then the peace returns again. The stability, the solidity of the now. And if there were any doubts, they dissolve immediately. So I was reminding myself of being gentle, of being kind, of being soft in my energies. Quite often the mind is very rigid, it's very sharp. When it wants something, there's almost a spike of desire. It's often it's not a gradual thing. Suddenly it's there and it's intense, and it's so it's always having that softness, that gentleness. Being slow as well is good at times, and that absorbs into the mind. It softens the mind as well. So these thoughts arose perhaps out of the knowing, out of my current life situations, of what's going on with me, where things are intense. There is a conscious effort to focus on my mental health. Such as recording this at this present time is one of my few meaningful activities that I can do that is healthy for the mind. Perhaps healthy for the emotions as well. I'm here, of course, talking to myself in many ways, but I'm also sensing an energy. Whoever is watching, perhaps that can be transmitted and received as well. And there's a sense in me that this is important work. Of course, I don't mean work in the heavy or typical sense, but this is a meaningful part of my life, doing these videos, exploring and deepening my own understanding, and perhaps as an after or a side effect of that, perhaps helping others if that's possible. That's something that's very meaningful for me. And this reflects upon where I am with my, I guess, life situations would be maybe a good way of putting it. Things have receded, and perhaps out of grace, now all of my attention is on this practice, is on presence. And of course, there was almost an enjoyable energy before recording. I was having some thoughts about being soft and being kind, and there was a notion of wanting to share, wanting to reflect, wanting to perhaps help if possible. And I wanted to perhaps share a little bit more about my life situations with the aim that it may relate to those listening, to you, not shared in a energy of story and complaint, but perhaps I've heard similar examples from those in a teaching capacity, such as Ram Dass or Eckhart and Mooji and others as well. Listen to Rupert Spira, who's often shared moments of his life, and although this is just me talking about my own journey, there's no teaching here in any capacity, that I'm simply reflecting my presence journey in almost conveying it out loud. There seems to be an energy there that wants to share, that there isn't perhaps me here as a teacher. No, it's more there's something in here that has the capacity or energy to share. So I'm trusting in that. So there is awareness in me about the challenges I'm currently going through, life situations and challenges. And there can be small things and big things, such as there is awareness that I'm experiencing back pain as of late. And I'm trying to figure out if it's the mattress I'm sleeping on, if it's had its day and it needs to be replaced, or whether it's this chair I'm sitting on. And perhaps there's a challenge of if it does need to be replaced, then I need to notify, of course, the property owners, and maybe there's some resistance in me that says, okay, well, of course it's going to cost them money to replace. So I'm going through a thorough process of just confirming whether that is the case and what's happening with my back. Then there's a challenge for going into work as well. I've been away from any kind of work for a long time due to my health, and now there's a sense of wanting to try and build some foundations, such as returning to work in some way, hopefully a work where perhaps not so much as in an office, but more in a capacity to help others, such a job as that. So there's energies around dealing with that. So when logging on to the job sites, immediately there's tension and there's a triggering of perhaps pain body that comes up. And then maybe if the pain reaches the mind, there may be some thoughts that say, well, can I really do this? Am I well enough? Is this going to cost me? And then of course I've spoken about my living situation, although there's huge gratitude that I have what I have, but there's also a challenge and an awareness about, okay, well, it would be healthier to have perhaps something that's a bit more spacious, where perhaps friends or family can visit, and of course that's perhaps tied to work, that's perhaps tied to my financial situation as well. So you add that with my other health things going on at the moment. I'm not sure if I've spoken about my dealings with fatigue. I don't think I have. Maybe I did, but there's that as well. And trying to get to the source of that. And another health issue has arisen recently as well, which may require me to visit the hospital. Nothing serious, I hope. But just an example of, okay, there are life situations here, there are challenges, and we all have them. Of course, I've listed mine just to help with the mind, so maybe there's some relating happening there as well. Okay, going through these things, I'm going through these things. But in a sense, we all, in some ways, have a ball of dough in front of us that we are dealing with. Our life challenges, our life situations. I was laying in bed in the middle of the night. I was awake, and of course the mind was very active. At night it always is for me, so there was a bit more awareness to keep catching myself when going into thought. But then there was some conscious thinking. As I was thinking, another area of my life is relationships. Thinking, okay, that's another healthy building block to work on that. And then there was almost a play of thought happening there too. As I was lying there, the notion or the desire for a relationship, it started to become a bit more transparent. At times it's been very sharp, where I thought, oh, wow, this would fix a lot of things. This would make me more happy, or it would. It's what my life is missing, and this will help with my presence as well. But there was something that was becoming loose and transparent about it. I was lying in bed and thinking, well, what if I was in a relationship right now? What would really change in some respects? Perhaps if I was, there may be new challenges. Perhaps if there is a relationship, there will be another life situation coming up out of that. So it wasn't the case where I was thinking to have a relationship would be a problem and it would be more stuff, but there was almost awareness that, yes, perhaps there is desires there for connecting, for growing with another person. But it was almost seeing through that as well, going back to the oneness of life almost. Right to the essence of life, which is of course the now. And it made the sense of relationship, what happened when it became transparent as I laid in bed was it was almost a holistic energy about it. And there was an immediate awareness that, okay, if this came into my life, of course there'd be enjoyment, happiness, but there'd also be challenges and pain and potentially suffering, depending on how I dealt with that, depending on my inner workings, my trauma, my karmic tendencies. Let's use that phrase since we're reading the book. And so even though there's still that desire, there's still that wanting, perhaps it's no longer needing. And then also became okay that in this moment all is okay. And the sharpness of that desire or that focus began to disperse in the wholeness of now. And then there was a thought to think, well, how do I know what's best for me in this moment? Perhaps if I was to have a relationship in this moment, it would be problematic for me. Who knows? So there was a moment of trusting in life, that whether I was in a relationship or not, in that moment, laying in bed, it didn't make a difference. I could have been in a relationship and I'd still be, in that moment, awake, dealing with whatever was coming up. Perhaps in that instant it wouldn't be a relationship. Let's say if I was in one, then maybe I'd be awake at night thinking about maybe an argument or a disagreement I had with that person the night before. So again, it's just dealing with whatever is arising in the now. And as things are, perhaps we'll use the word deepening for me, there's a sense of, how else can I put it? There is now more attention into the now. My days are becoming more translucent or transparent. For example, with time, there is more of the same inner feelings, whether it's daytime or nighttime. There's still, of course, a difference there, and there's an acknowledgement, but there's also a deeper recognition that day and night are appearing in the now. And perhaps with those life situations I mentioned, those challenges, it's pulling me more into the now, especially when suffering arises. So on one hand, with my mind, I could list all of these things. If I was to perhaps confide in somebody and tell them the story of my life situations, that I'm dealing with this, and then now this has come up as well, it can be a big problem. Maybe it could be seen as a difficult life. But in the practice of being, it is all important, perhaps a necessary part of whatever is unfolding for me, and perhaps if you were to look at your life situations, maybe that's brought you here to watch this video and to look at other material on presence, on being. And so the kindness has come in as I was sitting here this morning, knowing that in some ways I'm on this sort of razor's edge, where there's a huge amount of sort of trauma and mental health symptoms on one side that I can easily, and I do, maybe in smaller doses now. It's not, perhaps in this current time, it's not days where I'm overcome with depressive symptoms and mental health. It may just be an hour or a moment or half a day, and then suddenly the presence becomes clear again. Or perhaps I become aware in the midst of that mental pain or suffering, and then I return to the now. And there was a thought amidst that, which probably generated the thoughts of kindness. It was, can I do this? Can I remain on this path? And maybe there was an awareness of things speeding up as life situations are getting more intense. It's forcing me deeper into the now, and it's almost having, each of one is having an effect on the other. Perhaps the more I'm going into the now, the more things are coming up for me to deal with. Perhaps these ailments in the body, but at the same time it feels like there is also healing happening as well as the continuation of the mental health ailments, the physical ailments. So a big dynamic, of course, beyond my understanding and awareness right now, but there's a sense of movement of certain things healing, but also other things arising that are requiring my attention. And it's making some things that used to be enjoyable, but now becoming very conscious of certain things I watch, such as previously I used to seek great comfort from watching lots of movies and films. And now there's perhaps, I'm a lot more selective, or it's harder to find something to watch where there can be some enjoyment from watching. Where in the past perhaps there was more unconsciousness when watching, and the mind sort of enjoyed it and wanted more and more, and now perhaps there's something more substantial wanted and needed if I was to watch a movie or film. Such as I watched something yesterday, and the sense of that film, there was something deeper in that film. It wasn't just the drama or characters and the plot of something happening. There was also something underlying that I could sense while watching. And so, whereas listening to music as well now, then it seeks that similar vibration. If it got something deeper in that, where it's not just something created perhaps purely from mind, but there's something underneath that's perhaps wholesome, or often if you was to watch a movie based on a true story, there's a sense of something deeper within that. That's more than just the making of that film, or just the entertainment. And one of the reasons of enjoyment recording was to connect as well. And I'm aware that in myself I deal with loneliness, or especially on this path where perhaps there's a bit more caution in connecting with people with different energies, and of course there's a preference to connect with those people or energies that are on this path. And you obviously heard the word Sangha or Sangat before. And so there was an enjoyment about creating this video, and where someone perhaps seeking that, a bit of community and a bit of connection, has this to watch potentially as well. And for me to record, I'm getting the connection also. had a thought perhaps in the future to do some live meditations purely for community and connection in a time where, in times of where loneliness, social isolation is so widespread. And so I wanted to perhaps, hopefully with these videos, this is helping, but also doing like live meditations can help as well. And perhaps I will do maybe some recorded meditations of just simply sitting and being, and maybe there'll be some pointers here and there, but largely it will just be a space to connect and be, especially if you're needing some connection. And perhaps a deeper connection. So, just looking at the time, I've been, feels like a few minutes, but I've been talking for over half an hour about, which is okay, it's good as well, feels like. Perhaps some of the things I've wanted to share I've been able to. Of course, as always, by the time I've hit the record button, there are things that I perhaps wanted to mention or bring up that are not reachable anymore in my mind. It's gone, but whatever is shared is okay. Okay, so I believe we just finished the section of talking about the smell of bondage. So let's return back there. Okay, yes, and I think we ended with the exercise, a sadhana of our becoming aware of our vasana. So we were talking about that. Okay, the next chapter is this now, chapter 2, is titled Volition. Volition, the basis of karma. So now there'll be various passages and sections talking about this. And it starts with a sutra which says, ultimately, life is neither suffering nor bliss. It is what you make it. So I'm going to jump in a little bit into this first section. Karma is much more fundamentally about volition. The reason why religious teachings all over the world are always talking about love is that the moment you become loving, you are naturally at your best in relation to others. The moment you view everyone with love, your intention is automatically inclusive. Regardless of what blunders you may commit in the name of love, the karma still does not accumulate beyond a point. Your intention makes all the difference. If you say something prompted by love and another person gets hurt, that is his karma, not yours. But if you say something out of hatred and another person has no problem with it, it is good karma for them and not for you. You still acquire negative karma. How the recipient of your hatred reacts is not the point. The accumulation of karma is determined by your intention, not merely by its impact on someone else. Consider another situation. Let us say you are playing with a knife. It accidentally hits someone and they fall down dead. This is one kind of karma. In another scenario, you get into an argument with someone while cutting vegetables. In the heat of the moment, you stab them and they die. In a third situation, you meticulously plan how you would dispose of an enemy. You pursue them and thrust a knife into them. In the fourth scenario, you behave in a very friendly manner with someone and invite them over to dinner. After a wonderfully cordial meal, when they are sitting back satiated, you murder them. I've changed the wording here to make it less graphic if that's possible. This is yet another kind of karma. In a fifth situation, you are perfectly normal in your behavior with a person, but internally you keep plotting all the terrible things you want to do to them. In the first four cases, the same ingredients are present: you, the other person, the knife, and death. The karma, however, is not the same. It is not difficult to guess which will breed the worst karmas. By worst, I do not mean the most immoral. I mean that which creates the worst consequences for you. The consequence for the other person is the same, but the impact on you is determined by the nature of your volition. It is the level of bitterness and hatred that causes karma, not the act alone. The fifth scenario is actually the worst in terms of karmic accumulation. The first four talk about situations in which the result is the same for the other person. In the fifth, there is no consequence for the other person. They have been released from their karma, so it is good for them. But your karma is much stronger because here you are repeating the act 1,000,000 times within yourself. Acting out the bitterness externally has a grave physical consequence for you, a jail sentence. But allowing the bitterness to grow and multiply within has even deeper internal consequences. Intention motivated by a personal agenda always accrues much more karma. If you keep repeating the same mental action, it is because you have a strong personal stake in the matter. You may not be sentenced to prison, but you have imprisoned yourself. And yet the karmic consequence is not a punishment. The consequence is simply life's way of trying to work out the karma you are constantly creating. If you perform only negative mental karma, there may be no external consequence, but you experience a deeper level of internal suffering. What does working out karma mean? It means that the play of your life is happening according to your tendencies, not according to some system of right and wrong. Your life simply organizes itself in order to fulfill your inclinations. Karma is not a punishment or reward. It is just a process by which life tries to fulfill itself. A level of volition that many people are unaware of is action on the energy level. A negative thought, as we know, can breed karma. A negative thought combined with a negative emotion means a deeper karma. When a negative thought, negative emotion, and negative external action combine, there is even deeper karma. When a negative thought and negative emotion combine with a recurrent mental action, that karma is deeper still. Killing someone in your head in 1,000 different ways, as we saw, accumulates a great deal of karma. However, there are those who opt for energy-based action. This could mean engaging in practices that result in the death of an adversary or rival, or any person they want to get out of the way. Such practices are known as occult or black magic. These systems exist on the fringes of many cultures, wherein a few experts can be approached to use their energies to cause harm to someone else. Once you energetically try to influence someone else for your own benefit, it is the worst possible karma. The karma generated by energy-based actions goes deeper than any other kind of action. So, just to reflect a little bit on what has been read. So the essence here is life working out, life organizing itself and working out to fulfill your inclinations. So it's, of course, whatever is generated by us, thoughts, feelings, emotions, on the energy, physical actions, it's all almost ingredients that life uses to bring in situations or to remove situations from your life. So on one level, this can be extremely liberating to know that, okay, it's me that's generating, it's me that's creating the karma, the situations of my life. But on another hand, of course, it's a very intense and sharp notion to think about each thought we're having, or to perhaps be worried about, okay, I'm thinking this, so I'm creating karma. Oh, am I doing this? I'm creating. So one thing I find with reading this, it's allowing it to settle. The mind may sort of pick through with a fine tooth comb of this, doing this will result in this. But it's to remind ourselves, and this is what I remind myself of, as just being present in this moment now and acting from here. where it's not being worried to, okay, I must be completely present now for the rest of my life, so I've minimized karma, and just simply resting in your true nature of who you are. There's no position, there's no posture you need to hold of presence. To think, okay, I must remain in presence, because there's a tension there. One of the things of grace is once you clear out, or you let go of what you are not, then life takes care of life in this way. When you rest in presence, no karma is generated from that place. No accumulation when you are in the present moment. And so it's almost seeking the refuge of the now, the simplicity of the now. Of course, we are looking under the bonnet here and looking at all of our perhaps past conditioning and our karmic tendencies. And of course, we're talking about the different severities of karma, that perhaps one action that has emotions involved and repeated mental energies with that action or thought. But of course the antidote is very simple. And it's not driving, constantly looking in the rear view of analysing everything we've done. For me, I say this because for me this is what comes up when I read this. My mind is getting a hold of this, and it wants to succeed in this karmic cycle. It wants, okay, right, we need to organise myself so I don't create more karma. And for me, I don't feel that's the right way to go at all. It's a place from fear and disconnection. But perhaps allow the awareness of the mechanisms of how we've perhaps lived life and how we've lived life. Just the awareness of this now can add some softening to the actions we do. Some awareness now to the thought patterns, or when I say the price of our thought patterns, not in a fearful way, just that, well, do I want to create this? And once you've reached a certain level of suffering, it's a very easy no. And it's not a no with resistance that I keep it away from me. It's a no that I've got two paths in front of me. Let's walk the path where less or minimum karma is created, less or minimum suffering or painful situations are created. And it's as effortless as that. And of course, volition here is perhaps choice, and there's intention as well. So you can now choose whether thinking is needed. You can choose by what intentions you want actions to be created. And this can cut through everything, whether it's a conversation with a loved one, whether you choose to have the intention of having an open heart, choosing to be soft in your energy, loving. Or when walking down the street, can you choose to intend to be kind to your body, to allow each of your muscles to move in a very gentle, loose way, to perhaps enjoy the movement of the body, something that may be missed for decades. as if you're walking for the first time. So just to finish off the end of this section of volition in the chapter of the basics of karma. Thus, it is not simply doing a deed that accumulates karma. It is how you do it, and with what motive it is performed, that makes all the difference. And perhaps it's a good time to leave it there. And when I first read this, it brought a huge amount of peace by adding intention and connectedness to our actions. In some ways it can feel like it takes care of itself. For example, if you are in a very loving, connected space, it's almost a natural filter on how we will speak or how we will act. Even if someone may take offense to it or react in an upset way, you're taking care of your own way of being. And being in that loving space, you can sense the cleanness in it, that it's free from our software of our maybe agendas or thoughts of how to calculate and how you want to do things. It's from a very sort of spontaneous and alive way of being, versus perhaps the stale way of trying to act and behave from a blueprint that's in our minds of how we think we should behave and do, and if we do this, then that means they will see me in this way, and that's good, and playing all of that game, versus you're completely free in how you are in your natural state of your being, of your nature. So perhaps we can end this episode with just a few moments of presence, just sharing, allowing this to settle, and perhaps feeling a bit more empowered, a bit more clear in perhaps again I use this very lightly, the consequences, the results of the actions that are performed, whether it's thoughts or physical actions. thank you for joining me for this episode. I wish you well, and if you'll see each other again here very soon, take care.